Hello everyone, my name is Yan Feng. So today, George and I are going to talk about our final project for Command Shift, Hashtify. So why did we build this app? Social media marketing is very important for businesses, both big and small. It is an essential way to reach your customers, gain valuable insights, and grow your brand. If you are a small business or just a personal account wanting to reach a bigger audience, using hashtag is an essential part of social media strategy. And there are some examples that you can see from this slide. However, it can be a hassle to create hashtag for your Twitter or Instagram posts, especially if you want to add up to 30 hashtags to reach the maximum. For small business owners or people like me, just with a personal account, normally we might just create all the hashtags we need manually and just save them to the Notes app in our phones. Then we will reuse them as needed. But it can be quite time-consuming to find the hashtag we need because we might have so many random things in our Notes app. So I thought it would be great if there is an app that can generate the hashtag for us and allow us to save and organize them so that they can be easily reused. That's why we built Hashtify, and George is going to show and tell you more about our app.
Thanks, Jan. I'm George, and I want to give you a quick look at how our project works. Here's the landing page, and our design philosophy was friendly, fun, and easy to read. We have two choices here. We can log in to search, create, and manage our hashtags, or we can do a quick search without logging in. So let's try that. We can search for any term, and we get back some real-time statistics for this hashtag. We can see it gets around 12,000 views per hour, and if we try a different search, we can see that music is much more popular with over 5 million views, and this helps us to make informed, smart decisions about which hashtags will have more impact. Below the stats, this is our selection of related hashtags, and we can copy that directly to the clipboard with one easy click. Now, if we have a look at logging in with Facebook, we can see that we now have access to my hashtags and add hashtags. Let's first have a look at image search. So to do this, we'll click choose file, choose a file from our computer and upload it. And once it's loaded, we'll submit it, and then we'll get back a bunch of results for relevant hashtags. Now we can copy that to the clipboard as we did before, or we can save this into our hashtags. Now what this does is it pre-populates the add hashtag form, and what we can do is get rid of all the irrelevant ones that we don't like. We could even add ones of our own. We can choose a category, let's say art for this one, and we do need to give it a name, so we could perhaps call it blue, as that might be relevant. Let's save that into our My Hashtags page, and we can see that all of our hashtags that we've created are saved here. We can also filter these by category. And if we want to delete or copy them, we can do so with the convenient buttons here. If we don't like one, just click delete and it disappears. So I took the lead for front-end and content design. I decided to use React to make a React-based single-page web application with React Router. I also used Axios to interact with the backend, JSON Web Tokens and JS cookies to allow users to stay logged in when the page refreshes or when they navigate away and back to the site. We also use Sass to style the web app. This is because Sass makes writing dry, concise CSS really easy. And this we were able to reuse designs for a cohesive look. We use TS particles for fun, dynamic interactivity, which brings together the general design principle for a fun, friendly app. So here we are in VS Code, the center of the front end, app.js. So here you can see I've used React Router with conditional rendering to only display relevant components to users. This means that users can't access parts of the app without logging in. And also at the top here, I have set state with multiple variables so that they can be passed down around the app. Now here's an example of a request made to the backend. This fields variable here, that comes from a form submission. We send that along with an Axios post request to the backend, and depending on the result that we get back, an alert message will be rendered so the user knows if it was a successful or unsuccessful submission. Here is some of the variables we've used with Sass at the top. We've also got mix-ins here as well. This meant that we could keep the CSS really efficient and dry. And I wrote the styling here for all the buttons once, but since we had many buttons, This meant that if I wanted to make a change to the buttons, I only needed to make that change once, and that saves a lot of time.
And now I'll be talking through the backend of our app. We created an Express API using Postgres to create the database and SQLite to query it. We also used Docker to create a container for the database, and Postman was used to query the routes that we created. We keep the confidential data in .env file and use .env package to access the environment variables. Axios was used to send HTTP requests and manage responses, and we used JSON Web Tokens for handling authentication. We created routes that start with hashtags that allow users to save, delete, retrieve saved hashtags, or to filter them by category. Another route we created that start with auth that handles generating the tokens and sending it back to the front end. We also created another free route to fetch data from the external API's rights kit, which includes hashtag statistic and generating the actual hashtag using a keyword or image search. Let me quickly show you how we use Firebase to get the image URL from front end and use Axios to fetch the data from this API. So first of all, we created the Firebase config file and import the Firebase storage inside this file. And then we created two state variables, one for image and one for URL. And then in the search by image component, we created the upload function to handle the upload image to be stored on our Firebase. And then we use getDownloadURL function to get the URL, and then we use the setURL function to update the current URL value that will be used as a parameter for making API call later. And then on our backend, once we get the image URL, then we will use Axios to make the GET request to this URL with the image URL passed as a parameter. If the request is a success, then it will return status code 200 and the data in JSON format in the response. It will console.log the error if we catch any.
So how did we work together to make this happen? Well, to plan and organise the project, we used Figma, where we mind mapped and explored features before creating some wireframes to plan the user journey. Here, you can see I used prototypes to mock up the user journey, helping to create a smooth end-to-end experience with good flow. To collaborate, we used Slack, Google Meet, and Trello. Here on Trello, you can see that we have many things in the done column, and this was because we carefully tracked every step, every feature, and every change. This meant that we were in control of the whole project and very organised. We used GitHub for version control, with two repos, one for the front end and one for the back end. We had regular stand-ups to keep each other up to speed. This meant we could work quickly without spending time having to try and figure out what someone has done just by reading their code. And we also made branches for every new feature to keep organised and safe. We also did pair programming to tackle tougher problems by putting our heads together.
During this project, we did encounter some problems and challenges. In the early stage, the first thing we did was to test the external API to see if we can fetch the data quickly and accurately. The original API we chose didn't have a very stable server and sometimes didn't return any data back. Then we quickly switched to our current API, RightsKit, and then it's been working perfectly with our app. We also had some issues getting the image URL while using Firebase storage, but it was quickly resolved after doing some reading and watching some videos. We also spent quite some time fixing the cookies, as it wouldn't set on the front end after being generated from our backend, and some issues with the prop text validation and git conflicts as well. But all these issues were quickly resolved with the support and guidance from our tutors.
So what would we like to do if we had a bit more time? Well, firstly, we would like more sign-up options, because at the moment we only have sign-in with Facebook, which is quite limiting. We could maybe use emails or other social medias, which would be quite convenient. We'd also like to allow users to edit their saved hashtags, because at the moment they'd have to delete and re-add it, and that's quite a hassle. We would also like to allow users to share directly to social media, and we would also like to have done better testing. Since time was so limited, we did quite basic testing, and it probably could be more comprehensive. So that's all from us. Thanks for listening. We want to thank the tutors at Command Shift for all their help and support, and if you want to find us, our GitHub and LinkedIn usernames are on the screen now. Thank you.